Hi, this is Carl Binder, CEO of the Performance Thinking Network, and this is a continuation of our discussion about leadership and management from the perspective of performance thinking. Now, as those of you familiar with our work know that our 6 boxes model begins with box 1, expectations and feedback, and we always say you got to start there. And it's certainly kind of a truism that leaders and managers set expectations for their people. Everybody kind of knows that. But it's really critical in practice that individuals and teams receive consistent, clear expectations. And that's what I want to unpack a little bit with you. There are many aspects of the work environment that set expectations for performance. It starts with leaders and managers communicating those expectations and ideally modeling what they expect of people to do and produce and how they expect people to perform. But from top to bottom, there's also lots of documents and messages. There's mission, vision, values, communications. There's strategy and strategic objectives. There are tactics, there are plans, there are project charters. Those are all things which should be aligned consistently with a set of expectations so that people are very clear. And at the human level, there's a lot of levels of management. There are senior leaders, there are managers, there are supervisors, and then there's also trainers who often take a big part in setting expectations during training, and even peers. And again, these things all need to line up. Now, in my almost 40 years of management consulting and performance improvement, what I've noticed is that virtually every project, every situation that I've ever been involved in, whether it's organization-wide, for a process, for a role, or even at the individual level, almost every time when there's been a performance problem of some kind, you could trace part of that problem to a lack of clarity on expectations. And so let me give you a few examples which might ring true to you. Working in a major telecommunications call center some years ago, we were working with customer service representatives. And with respect to this one particular thing, we found a very interesting thing about expectations, which is that there were multiple ways that you could use the various systems that the customer service reps had to find certain information that you might need when speaking with customers. But what we were told by the customer service reps was it depends on who's supervising on that shift. Because some of the supervisors will tell you to do it one way and use one system or one tool, and the others will tell you another way. And this is very confusing, especially for new people or for people who are new to that part of the system. And so, of course, our recommendation was the supervisors should agree on the one, maybe best, but just one way to do this, and have that be the consistent message about how they set expectations for doing this particular thing. Another example was a little bit more organizational for salespeople in a major sort of enterprise software company. We were involved in a major product launch. And at some point, I was in a room with the VP of that product group up in the front of the room, and there were several hundred salespeople. And the VP was talking about how really important this product was and how it was a strategic priority, and we needed to get that into all of our client organizations because it would lead to other business and blah, blah, blah. And I was sitting next to a couple of senior sales reps, and one of them turned to the other guy. They'd just gotten their comp plans that morning, their compensation plans. He said, there's nothing in here about this product. We're not getting any special bonus for this, and it's a lot harder to sell this. This is new stuff, and I can make my numbers with my old products that I know how to sell very well, so I don't see any reason why I should focus on it. So that's an example of how expectations need to also line up with consequences. In other words, if I set an expectation, as my friend Aubrey Daniels used to say, you tell people to do something repeatedly, but if nothing ever good happens after they do it, they might not be doing it so much anymore. And then the third example was in a project I was doing for a major biotech firm. And it's a big process that's common in a lot of biotech and pharmaceutical firms. They called it the materials approval and compliance process. And the idea is that anybody in training, in marketing, and certain other functions who are producing things like ads or training materials or brochures or applications that are going to eventually get out to the customer, out to public, they need to submit that material to a team of people, which generally involves an attorney, a clinical specialist, a scientist, and a regulatory compliance specialist. And those people have to approve and edit that, and it's kind of a running through the gauntlet thing. And it caused a lot of trouble, and there was a lot of friction around it because as some of the Marketing guys would say we submitted a brochure and we came back with a dissertation because they added all this fine print and so forth. In any case, what we observed was that there were different attorneys on these teams, depending on which team it was. And the attorneys, depending on their history with audits and such, had different degrees of risk tolerance with respect to certain kinds of language and certain kinds of material that might be in these things they were reviewing. And so depended on which team you submitted your material to, you might or might not get it approved. And so some of the marketing people would game this. They would try to get with the teams they knew where the attorney was a little bit looser. But, that's a problem. That's a problem for productivity and engagement and so forth. And, the solution again there is to get those attorneys together and to define some standards of risk tolerance with respect to critical features. These are just a few examples. But again, just about every performance improvement opportunity I've ever seen incorporates something about setting clear expectations. And this is a very popular topic with management and leadership experts. So for example, Stephen M.R. Covey, who's the son of the original Stephen Covey, had a book called The Speed of Trust. It's a very interesting book. He says people have trust established, things go more smoothly, people are more productive, and so forth. And what he said in this book, among other things, was that breakdowns of trust are almost always the result of violated expectations. And so what that means in terms of the 6 boxes model is an expectation is set to produce or do something. But then tools and resources might not be provided. So you're a performer, you're trying to get this thing done, but it's like the rug is pulled out from underneath you because you don't have the resources to get it done. Or you work very hard, you accomplish the thing, and then nobody notices. There's no recognition, there's no consequence. And so, as our friend Aubrey Daniels has said many times, you can tell somebody to do something, but if they do it and nothing happens, they might not be paying attention to you anymore. So the importance of clarifying expectations and then following up on them is extremely important. And then Sean Covey, the grandson of the original Covey, has a recent book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. And one of the points that he makes is that we, as leaders or managers who tend to have a lot of things that we're juggling, a lot of priorities, a long to-do list, we need to focus our expectations on what he calls wildly important goals, the most important stuff. Everybody needs to be clear about that. Makes perfect sense. It's often a problem. Now, one other kind of authority, the famous British writer George Bernard Shaw had this great quotation where he said, "The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place." And we've seen this over and over again. You talk to leaders and managers and you say, "What are your goals? How are you setting expectations for your people?" And they'll say, "Oh, we're very clear about this. We always state our expectations and goals and so forth." And then you go to the teams and individuals that work for them and they say, "I don't know. The boss is often saying a lot of different stuff. It's kind of fuzzy. I'm not sure what the priorities are here." So, as we often say, an expectation is only an expectation if it is. And what we mean by that is if the performers, the individuals, the teams, the people that we're expecting to perform in a particular way can tell you back what the expectations are, what the priorities are, clearly in a way that's actionable and consistent, then we know we've set expectations. But if they cannot, we need to re-clarify and refocus. So this is just a little bit of a taste about leadership and management through the perspective of performance thinking. But because we start with box 1 expectations, we want to emphasize that one of the most important roles of leaders and managers is to establish and consistently align crystal clear expectations for performance.